Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. It's so good to have you with us. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Let's get to it, Dave. So
All
much
right.
going on. So much
I know
going on.
there is. Well, I wanted to ask you, the stock market hit a record yesterday. Job growth this month came in far higher than expected. Inflation continues to cool, as in the last report. By some measures, the economy is better than ever. Yet your candidate for president says that the country is going down the tubes. We've become an S-hole nation. We're a third world place. We're Venezuela on steroids. We're going to hell. Yada yada yada. So at some point, do you think that enough voters are going to look at this? First of all, can you at least acknowledge that that's BS and that it's a bad strategy that really trashes the country? But more importantly, perhaps, do you think enough voters that will decide this election? Obviously, the MAGA crowd is locked and loaded, but enough of the swing voters, the voters that may have voted for Trump last time or don't really want to vote for Harris, but think Trump is just such a jerk. Will enough of those voters finally say, hey, there's such a disconnect that it's going to affect my vote?
That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the Electoral College shifting. It's actually breaking for Trump. And I track this pretty regularly on Real Clear Politics.
But do you believe it? That was the first question.
I believe the energy shift is actually
broken it to say that.
No, I actually do believe the energy shift is for Trump. And
no, I'm talking about trashing the country. He's crapping on the country all the time. When our economy is better than ever, our military is stronger than ever. Look at us compared to every other country in the world in terms of inflation, in terms of our growth, in terms of everything. We're doing so much better. People still want to come here, yet he continues to dump on this country. Can you at least acknowledge that that's really bad for morale and it's just a lie?
Trump loves America, first of all, so that's not the case.
He doesn't show it.
I think this is his way of saying the same thing that Ronald Reagan said, which is that we are always one generation away from losing freedom. It's the same thing. It's just said in a different way.
Ronald Reagan.
Can I finish? Can I respond to your question? You keep interrupting.
You're not responding to my question.
My friend, you keep interrupting me. My interpretation of Trump's how Trump speaks. Trump is not a polished, radio host like Reagan was. Reagan was Mr. PR. He knew how to say things in a way that was much more polished. It was more in that time. That's the way people communicated. I don't agree with all the ways that Trump communicates, but it's undoubtedly true that he speaks to people in a way that's visceral. And the reality is that under Biden, real average weekly earnings are down 3.4%. Inflation is up a cumulative 20.5%. Electricity bills are cumulatively up 31%. Gas prices are up a cumulative 38%. Groceries 22%. Hotels 42%. Baby food, kids food, 70%, rent up 23%. So as much as the stock market might be doing great, this is not how Americans feel. And that's what they're saying when they talk about the economy is their top number one issue. And immigration as well is a top issue, because when you look again at net job creation among U.S. citizens versus immigrants, it's higher among immigrants versus citizens proportionately. And then you're also talking about the fact that the overall lifespan of the U.S. and the mental health of the U.S. is down. We have significantly high depression, and we have the highest suicide rate since the Great Depression. I mean, it's actually higher now than the Great Depression. So I just think it's a disconnect to say that we're in la la land, and that I agree with you. I love America, and we should be praising America and talking about the hope. And you're right that hundreds of millions of immigrants. By the way, I would add hundreds of millions of immigrants of color. So the left, when they try to trash America and say we're a white supremacist country, people come here, people of color come here, and they're able to succeed because it's a meritocracy. So I'm with you on that. But at the same time, we can't lie to ourselves.
Well, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, just like we've had a guest on the show that said, I'm a Reagan Republican, but I'm a Trump supporter. That's an oxymoron. Because Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan would be tossed out of today's Republican Party on his derriere. And we've been through this before, so I don't need to rehash it because we don't have time. Secondly, the inflation, I agree with you, is a very personal thing, but inflation was started under Trump, continued under Biden, and the genesis of it, if you look back, is when Trump always boasts about how, oh, we never got in any wars. Well, Congress wanted to stop selling weapons to the Saudis because over 100,000 people were killed in Yemen, but Trump refused to do it. And then he got both the Saudis and the Russians to cut back their oil production, which is actually how you can argue inflation started. So Trump is partially responsible for inflation too. It's not just Biden. 80% of it was COVID and that mangled supply chains. And then you had people wanting to spend money, so you had too much money chasing too few goods. That's certainly understandable, but it certainly does hit people personally. But again, Trump is the only president since Herbert Hoover to have a net job loss, so his record on the economy is weak. Biden's record, other than inflation, has been better on every mark. Obama had more job growth in the last 3 years of his administration than Trump did in the first 3 years of his. Trump ranks in average GDP growth over the last how many presidents? I think he ranks 6th or 7th. Jimmy Carter haven't had a higher average growth. So again, the record is very weak. But the point is, you don't trash this country. And it just shows you that Trump leads through division. Ronald Reagan led through unity. That is the big difference. And that is why the most unheralded, I think, frankly, unreported issue that Trump has done is just so fray and damage the social fabric of this country, make us become so much more divided, make us become so much more polarized, make us become so much more tribal. And that is something that is unforgivable. And it's the same thing with Netanyahu in Israel. They're brothers from another mother. And leading through division is not a way to make a country whole again. And that's what Harris is trying to do. She's talking about at least bringing people together and trying to work across the aisle. That's something that Trump has never done. Anytime he even talked about doing it in his administration, his people, like when it came to a deal with immigration and the Dreamers, Stephen Miller slapped it down. Oh, no, Mr. President, your base would do that. Because it shows that Donald Trump is not president of the United States, or wasn't president of the United States. He was president of his base.
Look, I agree with you, Dave, that I don't like all of the rhetoric from Trump. I agree there are times when it was just golden opportunities for him to bring people together. I agree with you there. I will say that when you look at overall ideology, this is The Economist reported on this, which is not a conservative media outlet. They reported the ideology shift in terms of rightward versus leftward, and the shift ideologically among the leaders of the Democrat Party was a far greater shift left than there was a shift to the right among Republicans. And that is the reality, that Trump is the mirror holding up the reflection of that. And the reality is that numerous studies show that conservatives are actually more likely to have progressive friends, or say they want to have progressive friends, and they're much more tolerant and open. I have numerous people in my life. My friend's husband divorced her because she's a Trump supporter. One of my Harvard roommates refused to talk to me for 7 years because I was a Trump supporter. I would never, ever do that to anybody. I would never, ever dehumanize someone because they voted for Obama or Biden. But that happens quite more frequently, and the data suggests it, and the data confirms it. And the left says they care about science and data, but they don't actually care about the data that shows how intolerant they have become. And Trump is the mirror for that. Trump is the gravitational pull against it. And if the left doesn't like it, look in the mirror. And it started under Barack Obama, actually. The division started under Barack Obama. If you look at the racial division, it began under Barack Obama, because when Black Lives Matter came on the scene, he refused to reject their racist ideology to attack America as a white supremacist country. And so that is where I would say Barack Obama is the one who destroyed the foundations of our social fabric by refusing to reject this notion that America is a white supremacist country. And so it's every force, it's physics. There's a force, there's a counterforce. Do I agree with all of Trump's tactics? No, but it's undeniable.
Well, as I said, there may be a few isolated examples, and if you look at the policies, and that's what I think is pretty interesting is if you look at a lot of the policies versus Trump versus Biden or Trump versus Obama, the Democratic Party has been more towards the center in terms of the policies. Are there wackos on both sides? Absolutely. But the wackos on the left still want to govern within a constitutional order. That is the difference between the two parties right now. You have one party that has committed to govern within a constitutional order, and you have one party that has not. Trump still refuses to acknowledge, and he had a chance in the debate to acknowledge that he lost the 2020 election. He refuses to acknowledge that he will accept the results of the 24 election. They're already laying the groundwork to try to fight it with these lawsuits that they're already filing proactively by putting people on election boards like Georgia that are changing the rules to make it harder. So they're just not into free and fair elections. And if we don't have a democracy, if we don't have a peaceful transfer of power, the policy doesn't matter.